Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with Don Schmincke. Don is a former MIT and Johns Hopkins Institute researcher turned organizational strategic development consultant. He is the guy CEOs bring in when all the experts fail. Don Schmincke is the author of the best-selling books The High Altitude Leadership and The Code of Executive and has been featured in the Wall Street Journal and USA Today. He is an award-winning speaker, researcher, founder of the Saga Leadership Institute, and delivered over 1,700 speeches. Don, welcome to our risk management show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Don, with your background, I believe we will have a really thoughtful conversation about leadership and how risk and security managers should think about leadership and communicate with the board and senior managers.
Sure.
Can you give us a little bit more insights about your career path and how does an MIT planetary physicist end up training CEOs and writing leadership books?
Well, that in itself was a risky path. I yeah, I almost dropped out of high school early. I was totally bored, and I was told I might have to repeat the senior year, and I thought, oh well, wait, that ain't gonna happen. I said, what do I got to do? So we got 90 days to do the whole senior year, which of course I said, okay, now I'm excited, and I did, and then I ended up going to a community college, and then I got involved with I got fascinated with computers and all these other things, and a couple of people there were from MIT. They were retired and they were enjoying teaching, and I didn't know what MIT was. I thought it was a trade school or something. What is this? Next thing I know, I'm at MIT, and then things really took off, and I ended up getting involved with a lot of different sciences. Did work in earth and planetary physics, but also automated the Harvard MIT Biomedical Laboratory and did some work with nuclear tried missile systems. And so it was a good exposure to a variety of engineering and sciences. But it was when I went to Hopkins and I did my graduate work there, ended up teaching there, that I started running into a lot of CEOs who were in the executive MBA programs complaining about the high failure rates of management theory, and because we get 35,000 business books published every year, and yet we still have the same chronic problems. So all of a sudden, I became interested in that. So I thought this would be another area to explore. Oxford University gave me permission to use an ancient manuscript. And I had this theory that maybe a lot of what our struggles are biological, because we have so much in common regarding these problems, and they're so ancient. Maybe there's a biological pattern. So I published a book called The Code of the Executive based on this 700-year-old manuscript the samurai used to train
Oh,
managers. And that went into like a dozen languages. Next thing you know, I'm on CNN and a lot of the press and the Wall Street Journal. So all of a sudden, I was like, wow, somebody's interested in this stuff. So that's what happened. And that's how I got here. And so we continue to fund research and biological leadership and then apply it to companies. And so I spend a lot of my time inside corporations, training them on how to do this and growing their sales and organizational performance. So that's how I got here.
yeah, interesting. Well, samurai leadership, kind of. So there is no deficit of various leadership books on the market. What is the special angle about your approach?
We ended up deciding that we had to look at the failure rate. So basically, what's unique is we stopped studying successful companies because those great company lists that we get every year in these best-selling books only last a few years. So we started using techniques that had been validated for thousands of years, but also coupled with medical research. So in other words, they would have to be proven or understood from a biological perspective. With that, then we would go test. And so, contrary, a lot of these best-selling books the authors never really tested or implemented. We thought we're not going to do that. So we went in, and only when we saw results in dramatic sales improvements or internal organization performance did we begin teaching and publishing it. So it was a longer journey, but we felt that it was defensible, highly defensible, and we even gave them money back guarantees, which no one was ever doing. But that helped us become better scientists and researchers.
So all your research you did in Oxford or in other places as well? What is?
Always around. I mean, Oxford was gave us access to some, very magnificent manuscripts, but most of the expeditions we self-fund. So when I'm in Africa or various parts of Asia and going into these extreme environments, is to really study, humans, how they lead, what are some of the genetic patterns that may contribute to that. And I had a lot of support from Hopkins, a lot of support from colleagues at Harvard and various universities. Our latest book, High Altitude Leadership, was well supported with Gordon, and it was great. So I've been blessed to be surrounded by really great researchers and people that like taking this kind of journey.
Mhm. So, what is your major finding? What you find that was missing in other kind of leadership books?
The what was happening, I think, what was holding the reason for the high failure rates in management theory, because you can go into the scholarly databases and find several million hits of articles published on the failure rates of management theory. Is I found out that what was missing is we were teaching people what to do and how to do it better, but that wasn't the problem. Those were just we were just giving them tools, but tools don't drive results. People drive results. And so we found, and this is what the anthropologists really helped me understand, is that human decision or human behavior is what drives results. The tools are, sometimes are useful, sometimes they aren't. But we were seeing a lot of companies putting millions of dollars into books and theories and consultants and thought leadership and all this other stuff. But when they went to implement, they didn't see a bottom line impact. And the thing is that until you can alter human decision, there won't be an impact. Just giving information out to people. And the way to alter the impact is to alter human belief. So in companies that could shift the beliefs of humans, it altered their decisions and their behaviors, which allow them to use the tools and get the results you want. So we began to realize that belief management was a missing part of leadership. And of course, it was a controversial part, but we didn't let that stop us. We just began developing techniques around that.
Mhm. So, in your last book, High Altitude Management, you explained kind of very dangerous situations where people climb mountains. And what is a one? Can you explain what is the one commonly held belief as it relates to leadership that you would like to debunk in this book?
Oh, yeah, we ended up probably upsetting a lot of people when we started debunking some of these theories. And High Altitude Leadership was written with Chris Warner, who is one of the top climbers in the world. And I met Chris climbing in the Andes, and we decided to do this book when NBC was filming, or he was self-filming for NBC, this K2 Summit. And it was done. It was in that time we began to realize how putting people in death zone environments allow us to observe biological leadership reaction and things like that. So that's where the dangers came from. And so there were a number of things that we were able to debunk or substitute with some sort of valid science. And one of those things is really this issue of we need more than a mission statement. Teams perform when they have something formidable ahead of them, where they need each other in order to survive. Now, this happened in real time on the K2 that NBC, now is available on their film. But for us, we ran into a lot of CEOs that had good mission statements and purpose and vision statements and why statements, but they didn't have language that inspired people to to engage a formidable challenge where they need each other. And there was something special about needing each other, because if they didn't need each other, they started feeding on each other. What do we mean by that? We mean like um, destructive political behavior. And a lot of CEOs felt that, half the time in my company is being spent on politics.
Mhm.
And that is such a waste. I mean, when you calculate the payroll and benefits of people just wasting their time in that. And so for us, it was, we found out that It's not about having a nice motivational mission statement. It's about having something that people can bond together around and be willing to suffer and sacrifice together. And no one was teaching suffering. It was all like the opposite. It's like, oh, we need happy employees. It's like, yeah, okay, that's cool. But the dangerous question is, what do they do when they're not happy? Do they turn and run, or do they lock arms and go into battle with you? So we started opening up all this that had scientific backing and historical backing. I mean, history is littered with these stories that validate, like, this is what happens. When we started doing that, we started seeing organizational performance accelerate at dramatic levels, and including revenues.
Mhm. So, if we follow up with your thinking, how does someone hearing this for the first time will take action based on your book? What he has to do? Some first steps, maybe one, two, three, or just to understand.
Well, a lot of it is artful. So it's we were trying to find a way to come up with like a checklist or some, steps that people would take. But we found out that the tools are great for that. What do I got to do and how do I do it differently? But again, the tools are just tools. The art of crafting the beliefs of humans is an entirely different process. And given that it's art, there are no checklists.
Ah, so
you know,
what do you teach? What you teach them? It should be kind of applicable science that you had to teach, right?
Yes, yes. And what we did is we ended up coming up with a framework that seemed to incorporate a lot of what we're talking about here, but in a way that could be applied. And by applied, I mean, like we took, and this is interesting you mentioned this because we're just now, we're always codifying it, but we took the normal process that we have. Most CEOs and executives starts with strategy. We got strategic planning. And then we go to leadership to implement the strategy. It's training and development work. And then we have to worry about culture, organizational structure, and how we execute. We took all those tools and we said, okay, what are the belief drivers missing? And we came up with an entirely different scale of things that applied more dramatically. Strategic intuition. So one step would be reset your entire strategic plan. If you're not out intuiting or out maneuvering the enemy, you don't have a strategy. You have just tactics. You know? And instead of a mission statement, come up with a compelling saga, passion that
Wow.
takes your winning formula into language that inspires people to want to suffer and sacrifice for a formidable goal ahead of them. And then we looked at tribal grouping behaviors for aligning culture. We looked at complex thinking capacity using the work of this Dr. Elliot Jack's psychiatric theories for how to group according to complex thinking levels. And then we used Black Hawk Down, where I spent about a year with Matt Eversman in the book Black Hawk Down. How
Mm.
do you execute a plan when it's in total failure? And we looked at adaptation, which actually now leads to some of the work I'm doing with George Stalk, who wrote the Harvard Business Review article on disruption about a year ago. So George and I get together for a couple hours every week, and I actually incorporated him in a samurai course that we have online now, and it's all about, I think, today looking at disruption. Either you're going to be the disruptor, or you're going to have to avoid disruption, and you don't have any choice. But now that we come out of COVID, we can see this more magnified.
Mm. Interesting. So, if there is one thing that the would-be aspired leaders should start doing right now that they are not doing currently, what would it be? Maybe one, two things.
Well, I think first is a step back and ask yourself, do I have a real strategy for winning, or do I just have a tactical plan? Do we just have a business meeting and we come up with the budgets, 1 year goals, metrics? Is that all we have? If that's all you have, then you're just stuck in an analytical quandary that chances are you won't outmaneuver the industry, and yeah, and you have to ask you, how do these small companies start in an industry and within their lifetime dominate the industry, violating expert opinion, violating industry analysis? They go the opposite direction and win and dominate. That's the point. So I would say the CEO needs to look at, what does this mean? Because once you have a winning formula, it's easier for you to look at issues around risk, because now you have a strategic way to make, I think, a more balanced decision on risk. and that's because it is risk, right? I mean, you can try to follow and be analytically safe, but that doesn't seem to contribute to competitive advantage.
Okay. So as an entrepreneur, you now have your own business, right? Saga Leadership, right? Saga Leadership
Yeah,
Institute. So my question is, what is the most important lesson that you have learned through your years of entrepreneurship?
to let go and let die those things that I thought were correct.
Okay, S-
I mean, how
interesting.
many times we get stuck because when I was studying the samurai, and that's why I created that course, Becoming Samurai, because people were saying, "How do I become samurai? Well, what is it about my fears that are stopping me?" And usually, I'm attached to something that I have to let die. And if I can let it die, I can die properly, not physically, but certainly in terms of your ego or your beliefs. It then frees you to achieve two things that I do not see taught in our business schools very much, and that is how to suffer and sacrifice by becoming more brave and more honorable. So the issue of bravery and honor, I think, is what I've learned as an entrepreneur, is if we can continue to let die those fears and what we're attached to, we have more opportunity to craft that. And that's what was taught 700 years ago. And we've applied it now in hundreds. I mean, I've trained, geez, I've done about 2,000 CEO group speeches. So if you do the math, I probably have trained over 10 or 15,000 CEOs. And
Oh.
I've had very few people walk out of those workshops saying, I don't understand what you just said. I mean, it's almost like the light goes on and says, of course. It's like so freaking obvious. In fact, I just finished a speech to a group in Canada before I came on, and several of them said, I wish I had learned this 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is obvious, but it's been lost, I think.
Yeah. It's funny that you kind of summarize in the center of your teaching because samurai was kind of now is instinct class because now Japan, of course, kind of evolved in more technological society and samurai couldn't evolve, but so it's a bit
Well, yeah,
interesting.
what happened? The samurai actually had they lost technology advantage because that's when, guns were invented and, they had a problem. What was interesting about the survival of the samurai concept, which we see in a lot of our movies, our television shows, we see these icons that have these samurai presence in the because somehow it touched the world in a way where even today our modern shows still take those themes forward. So I think it does. I think within each of us, we do have that desire for to be brave and honorable, and they left us an iconic metaphor, if you will, to capture that essence.
Okay. So you're serious, of course, you're a serious person, and your company is doing a serious business. But I wonder whether you have some funny stories to tell based on your vast experience, just to make it a little bit not dry.
Well, it's funny. I when I do my workshops, I just finished one as I said before I got on here. Like a 3-hour workshop, and I had to hire a speech coach to and what was his name, Bubba Bechtel. He was a humorist for and he opened in what Dolly Parton and a lot of famous celebrities. And he taught me how to be humorous because I'm teaching death and dying. What is this? So it was helpful. So my workshops today, we try to have some fun with it. And it's been great because I love to teach, and it's always easier to teach when people are laughing, and you can see something there that that works. So yeah, and I think for any leader or CEO, when you're going into looking at altering the beliefs of people, I think once we detach a bit from what we take so seriously, we have the freedom to do more innovation. And and that was for me. I mean, I didn't know I would get here. So, I may open a speech saying, "How does a planetary physicist from MIT end up teaching leadership?" And I say, "Well, I started studying the closest planet to us. Which one is that?" And everybody says, "Well, Mars or Venus." I'm like, "That's no, the one we're standing on. This is the closest planet to us." And then I notice humans, and they become more fascinating. And then I go from there because essentially that was the journey I was on.
Interesting. So, for example, if we take a relationship of a risk manager and a senior leadership board that is very kind of often discussed in our community of risk managers. So, how does who has to become samurai, a risk manager or a CEO board to enhance a kind of personal relationship and kind of promote, transform the culture to of the company further?
Well, when I did the Becoming Samurai course, it was really designed for everyone. So every employee, every professional, every executive would learn that internal journey, to bravery and honor. I'm going to release an advanced course later, which says, okay, if you're a leader of others, here are those elements, which is a different category of things, and it's all in the book, the Code of the Executive, because I had to take out pieces that were appropriate for personal growth and separate them from a leader of leading others, who leads others. And so it would have to be ideally everyone. Now, can everyone be samurai? Of course not. I mean, there's certain areas where selfishness and ego just they're just not able to get past that. However, when it comes to areas of risk management, I think the best way to begin is, instead of, because sometimes we do run into this where people are having arguments or there's tensions and trying to get certain systems or practices in place. I always suggest to you to first begin with a strategic context, and that means to have people engaged in, what is our strategy for winning. And from the ancients, and we do this today when we do strategic planning for companies, is, look, it's not that complicated. They told us this in the military for thousands of years. Where's the battlefield you're going to? Who's the real enemy there, and how do you win? And once everybody can get aligned around winning, then it's easier to look at structures and policies and procedures related to risk and why we need that in order to perform. And maybe there's areas that we don't need so much, because maybe our company is shifting. So I think if we can speak to each other from a strategic context, it has more power and gets more support, as opposed to endless arguments or battles between, you know, opinions.
Okay, fantastic. Just finalizing, if someone who is listening to this interview would like to walk away with one or two major takeaways, what would that be?
Oh, I would say, if you're listening to the podcast, it might have brought up some things that you want to look at in terms of yourself. What are the things you're hanging on to that's stopping you from making progress? And then the second thing is, what has to die for you to let go of those things? And we have a number of, people have been asking me, because I've been doing a lot of podcasts. So are there some micro courses or something to take? And so if people want to go to sagaleadership.com, SAGA, stole that from the Nordic the tribes, the Vikings, sagaleadership.com. There's a /podcast. I'm trying to upload a lot of things there, to just questions or techniques or things people can use, because I can't get to everyone. And I like to continue to further this research and this education. So yeah, there'll be things there for everyone to look at.
Fantastic. Thank you, Don. I have all my questions asked. So maybe if I missed something, would you like to add something to our audience?
No, no, I think you're on a good mission, and I think that the industry you represent is necessary. I'd like it to be seen as more strategic, because some cases when I go into companies, um, the the areas of risk and security and all that are more tactical or operationally focused, when really I think there should be a participation at a strategic level, especially today. I mean, as we get into industries under disruption, industries that are trying to use disruption to move ahead quickly. These are important questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome.